Welcome back to For New Eyes Only, the James Bond Retrospective Podcast, where I'm watching the movies for the first time. With me, as always, the Q to my James Bond, Nathan Simmons. How are you doing, sir?
Hi. Good, man. I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty energized. I'm recording 6 podcasts this weekend, and
you're a podcast monster, man.
I'm a maniac, but this was the one. Don't tell anyone else that I'm the most looking forward to. It's been behind the scenes. It's been a minute since we recorded together, and I'm just so happy to be here, sandwiched between Mr. Wendt and Mr. Kidd.
If God had wanted man to fly,
he would have given him wings, Mr. Kidd.
So there was a bit of a gap there between watching On Her Majesty's Secret Service and what we're talking about tonight, Diamonds Are Forever.
Yes. And in that time, I've realized that I said a few things that were just fully inaccurate in the last episode. Chief among them, I have since purchased the Blu-ray for Never Too Young to Die and realized that I said it stars Apollonia and not Vanity.
Get out of here, it's gonna blow!
Vanity.
I got my fucking Prince proteges mixed up, and I can't believe I did that.
Man, forget it. This girl ain't got no home training.
I was talking to the boys at Not a Bomb about it, and they're like, yeah, and Vanity's great in that. And I was like, she is, isn't she?
Whenever I told you I'd actually picked up the Blu-ray for that after we talked about it, and I was like, he said Apollonia was in this.
I sure did.
It's Vanity, but regardless, I haven't watched it yet, but I have watched a little bit, pulling clips from it, and I've got to find some time to sit down and watch it. It looks ridiculous.
It's so fun. I will legitimately date night style Skype you while you watch it. I want to watch it with you. It's killing me.
I'm female and male, man and woman. I'm better than you are.
Well, this one, I let you know a little while back that, I watched Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah.
Didn't really comment much on that. I just let you know that I'd watched it. I
think your text was, just watch Diamonds Are Forever. That was a movie. I think that's what you said. And then today you texted, and again, not to tip our hand too much, you texted me, you said you like this one, right?
Well, there's some things to like in this one.
Yeah,
but
totally.
There's some things not to like too, so we'll get into that moving forward.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I had made the prediction that Bond's gonna get revenge for what happened On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Boy, you sure would think so.
Yeah, and that happens, but it's kind of lackluster. This was tough to watch after On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and if you're watching these movies in sequence, I can't see how you wouldn't be just underwhelmed with this movie, because On Her Majesty's Secret Service is so good. And that's the last Bond movie I had in my head. Going into this one, it was a little rough the first watch.
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. This was one that I liked a lot as a kid. Right. Because it was goofy, over the top. There's 8 different villains in it, a zillion different set pieces. And when you're a kid who's not really focused on plot so much as spectacle, it works, it plays, so True. This was a lot of fun for me, and it's still a lot of fun revisiting, but you're totally right. When taken within the timeline of the James Bond series, such as it is, you can't help but wonder, well, why isn't Tracy figuring more into this? Why isn't there a big revenge story? Why is Connery making so many jokes for someone who lost their mind at the end of the last one?
Right. And we might as well just go ahead and get into it. But before we do, Nathan, why don't you try and give us the plot summary for Diamonds Are Forever in 007 seconds or less?
I'll do my best. Ready?
Ready. 3, 2, 1.
After exacting revenge on Blofeld, Bond infiltrates an international diamond smuggling ring.
5.4 seconds.
Not bad. I mean, that's about as much as you can do pitching the plot of a movie where you don't find out what the villain's plan is until the last 15 minutes of the film.
That's really the key to this here. We've had 6 movies so far that are fucking plot driven like crazy.
Yeah.
And whether or not you have trouble following what's going on, like I kind of had a little bit of trouble with Goldfinger. But like this one starts super cheesy.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And it's, we talked about how, especially with like You Only Live Twice feels like a travelogue, right?
Uh-huh.
This one is very much that, like, let's hang out in Las Vegas for a few days and see what we can get up to. And here's a set piece that we thought was funny, but like there's no logical reason for it to happen other than we need an action beat.
Right.
And that's, yeah, this one just kind of feels like, and this is a type of Bond movie that I think we will see a decent amount of going forward. Every time the Bond series takes a huge risk, they then follow it up with a much safer bet that plays like what I like to call the greatest hits package.
Mm-hmm.
And this one feels like that, up to and including bringing Sean Connery in, whether he wants to or not.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go ahead and talk about that. Connery is back for this one, which is funny. They kind of they masquerade him around a little bit at the beginning here. You don't get to see the face. You just
barely. Yeah.
Yeah, like you just hear someone looking for Ernst Stavro Blofeld. And this scene, I get what they were going for. I really do. They wanted to give us some kind of closure for the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Sure.
But what I'm starting to see with the Bond series is continuity is not their biggest strong suit.
Sure.
Especially with characters and villains and all that sort of stuff. We talked about that a little bit in the On Her Majesty's Secret Service episode.
Right.
Number one, you've got an actor coming back from another movie to play a villain in this one, which was...
Right. Charles Gray as Blofeld.
He would have been me in a matter of days if you'd given the poor fellow a chance.
I wanted to like tease this for you previously, but it's the weirdest choice, right?
Like when he came on screen, I was like, that dude was in
You Only Live Twice.
You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
But he wasn't Blofeld. Like,
no, he played Henderson, but he's playing Blofeld exactly the same way he plays Henderson. He might as well at one point turn to Bond and be like, I do everything the Japanese way. Like, it's so strange.
And that's not really even the weirdest part of his character in this movie. But this introductory scene is just, okay, he's getting revenge for what happened. He's going after Blofeld. He's going to right the wrongs that happened at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yep.
And the way that movie hits you in the heart, hits you in the feels, you feel bad for Bond at the end of it.
You want to see him take the fight to them.
I want to see him go after Blofeld, but I don't really think this was the way I wanted to see it.
But it feels like they want to give that sense of closure, but they also don't want to deal with the heaviness and the reality of the end of the last movie, because Tracy's never mentioned. A little bit of background here. This movie, the first draft was written by Richard Maybaum, who wrote the previous film, and was about Bond, specifically about Bond hunting down Blofeld and Irma Bunt with the help of Draco. Like, Tracy's dad was going to be a major character in the movie, helping him with his connections. He's like, I want to see the man who killed my daughter dead. Right. And that was the plot. And like, that's what you want. After the end of that, when Lazenby was going to return for the last movie, for this movie, that was the plan. We're going to see him like continue on with this like bloody revenge obsessed storyline. And the producers weren't a fan. Harry Saltzman and Albert Broccoli were just like, this is, people really kind of, it's so funny because back in the day, Secret Service got very mixed reviews. And this movie was like seen as a return to form and got rave reviews. And in the 50 years since then, that's swapped around. People are very much like, yeah, we would have liked to see you continue in this kind of grounded fashion. Lazenby should have gotten another movie or whatever. And so that they were like, look, we gotta get back to formula. And so Richard Maybaum turns in another draft that's about Goldfinger's brother looking for revenge. And he's like a shipping magnate with a laser cannon hidden on a boat, and would have led to like this big sea battle. And like, again, like we're already moving towards greatest hits.
Which would have been the plot for Die Hard 3, which we've already brought up was a ripoff of a Bond movie.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And Jeremy Irons just travels back in time to play Goldfinger's brother. But no, they would have gone so far as to be like, we know, we get it, you guys like Goldfinger. They would have cast Gert Frobe as Goldfinger's brother, who's smarter and more evil. Like, apparently, according to Maybaum, there's a line in his script that said something like Goldfinger was like, "Oh yes, you've met my brother Auric, who was a simpleton," or something like that. And as they're working on developing this script, Cubby Broccoli, this will tell you how fast and loose production on these Bond movies went. Cubby Broccoli has a nightmare about his buddy Howard Hughes. He has a nightmare that he goes to visit Howard Hughes at like one of his hotels, and he'd been replaced by an imposter. And so he was like, well, that's what the movie's got to be about. And we're going to shoot it in America. We're going to get all these tax breaks. We don't have to deal with unions. Like, it was like all this stuff. Like, we can use, Howard said he'll just let us use all his hotels to shoot at. He'll help us shut down streets for stunts. And so they bring in Tom Mankiewicz to write a new script. And Tom Mankiewicz would go on to write Superman the movie, a movie that we've talked about on this show a couple of times. And and again, they're still kind of scrambling to make sure that this is the right fit. I mentioned last month that Adam West had been approached for On Her Majesty's, but it was actually for this movie, and he turned it down. Michael Gambon turned it down, telling the producers that he was in terrible shape. Clint Eastwood was offered the role and turned it down.
I saw that.
And eventually they cast John Gavin.
And lo and behold, Sean said, yes, he would come back.
Of course, the producers already have an actor signed to play James Bond.
If Sean had not come back, John Gavin was going to play him.
Gavin graciously departs from the picture, with Cubby Broccoli insisting that his contract be paid in full. He continues acting, and from 1981 to 1986 serves as U.S. ambassador to Mexico. Sean Connery, meanwhile, negotiates a record sum for his return.
They had given him, I guess, a deal he couldn't refuse.
He got the unheard of sum of, I think, $1,200,000 for the film, which in 1970 was just extraordinary.
Yeah, a nice fat paycheck.
More than the budget of Dr. No, because up until You Only Live Twice, Connery was still getting paid the same amount of money for all of these movies, which is bonkers.
Yeah,
he was getting paid the same amount to star in the biggest franchise in the world. So yeah, they were like, we'll pay you $1 million. We will finance 3 movies of your choice that you would,
What I found interesting was they signed him for a 2-picture deal for this.
Yes.
And then I would presume that would be 2 more Bond movies, but apparently it was, he really was just like, no, they knew I was only coming back for the one.
Yeah.
And then, so it's
so
really
let's
weird
make this movie with Sidney Lumet instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the production, all of the behind the scenes making this movie were scrambled trying to figure out if George Lazenby had decided he was not going to come back.
Yeah.
He did not enjoy the process of making On Her Majesty's Secret Service. He didn't think he was a very good actor, apparently.
And his agent convinced him that spy movies were passé.
Yeah. So he wasn't coming back. That's
right.
Looking back on that now, I'm pretty disappointed in that.
Sure.
And that's really like when we open up this movie and you see Bond for the first time. He's aged. I mean, it's been almost 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
He's aged a little bit. So it's like when he walks on screen, I would imagine a lot of people were happy to see him back in the role. But for me, after On Her Majesty's Secret Service, I was just like, oh, man, we're back to the same old shit again.
But Connery also just you've never seen him care less about anything.
Oh, he is sleepwalking through this movie, dude.
Yeah.
Are you paying attention, 007?
From the beginning. I mean, I don't want to slag on him because look at me, but dude's not in shape for this one. He's barely acting. He is fully just even the way he says,
my name is Bond. James Bond.
It's just very, very tired. And yeah, I mean, we're 30 seconds into this Connery movie, and he's back to smacking around women and strangling them with their own bras. And
I have to say that made me laugh a little bit.
It's wild.
They were just going for it. This opening sequence really just kind of sets the tone for what we're in store for.
Sure.
Because it's campy, it's goofy,
and that's the stuff I like in this. There are moments in this movie where I kept thinking, this is inspired by Batman 66, right?
I could absolutely see that. Yeah.
There are moments in here where I'm just like, golly, I wish this was Adam West in a bat suit chasing down Egghead, Vincent Price.
We haven't one moment to lose.
It probably would have been much more enjoyable watching Adam West do all of this other than Sean Connery.
Jill St. John right there.
Yeah. So it's just, and I'm with you. Like when they do the camp in this, I'm laughing. I'm loving what I feel like they understand. They know what they're doing with the campiness in this.
Yeah.
It's just this movie's plot is a slog. And
well, it every single section of the plot has 4 extra layers that are unnecessary. We can't just have an idea like even the beginning of the movie, we're seeing we're seeing M telling Bond about this diamond ring, and we're seeing all of the various stages of the diamond cartel. And we can't just have Bond smuggling diamonds in. He has to fake someone else's death, put diamonds inside them, take them to a funeral parlor, burn them out of him. What are we doing?
And the entire time I'm just going, what's the fucking point of these diamonds other than the fact that they're being smuggled? I was getting frustrated.
It's not, and it honestly doesn't really pay off because, and speaking of Batman 66, we learned that they are powering a
laser.
Right. It might as well be Mr. Freeze's freeze gun.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
We also start with some of the worst ADR of the whole series when he puts that guy up against the wall and the guy's mouth is open and he goes, Cairo.
Yeah, obvious ADR there. I do and this is why I say you're getting what this movie's about in the beginning, because the guy at the table's playing 21 and he goes, hit me, and then James Bond hits him.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what they're setting you up for in this. Those are the jokes we're gonna get. Bond's one-liners are gonna be just as cheesy as this. I did happen to notice that when he grabs the girl's bikini and starts to strangle her, you get a little bit of a nip slip there in a PG movie.
Which you would not catch before this was in HD. It's truly strange.
Even when O'Toole is at the bottom of the pool, you can see through her clothing. It's not, HD definitely lets you see the things they did not want you to see in these movies. We'll
get to Plenty O'Toole because we'll talk about a character that's literally only introduced to be murdered.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. We learned that Blofeld has been having doubles given plastic surgery to look just like him, and I'm just this is a weird bit, because wouldn't it make more sense for the opening to be Bond taking someone out and then he learns way later that it's a plastic surgery thing? Instead, you're giving us the out right away.
Well, I was watching it going, okay, they could do one of two things here from someone watching this for the first time.
Yeah.
Either he's going to kill Blofeld at the beginning and it's going to be completely just nothing that I want out of this movie.
Right.
It's going to be lackluster as hell, or this is going to come back into play later. With it being a Bond movie, I should have known it's going to come back into play later.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The end of this movie kind of leaves things up in the air too, so moving forward from here, I'm still kind of questioning where they're going to go with this too, but that's another episode.
Oh, for sure. I love the opening titles of this movie. I think this is one of the best opening title sequences.
I don't know. I think I was so taken aback just by the way the movie starts that I did notice that Shirley Bassey's back, giving us our theme this time.
Diamonds are forever.
For my money, this is a better song than Goldfinger. This is the best Bassey theme. No shade to Moonraker coming up in a few movies.
But when you hear, Diamonds Are Forever, I was like, holy shit, she's back. I didn't even need to know the credit that she was back. I was like, that's Shirley Bassey from Goldfinger.
Yeah. Just Dame Bassey just crushing it. It's a very kind of subdued opening titles. We're used to lots of ladies dancing and big, guns going off. And this one's just a lot of lingering shots of diamonds and emeralds and zoom ins on, I don't know. I think it's kind of classy. I think it's really cool. And a lot of it is carried just by how damn good that song is.
Yeah, the song definitely helped me through it. I don't have a problem with the opening sequence. It's just I have seen them do better opening sequences already. So, but yeah, the song gets me through it. But you know, at the end of that opening sequence, we see him apparently dump Blofeld in lava or mud or something.
Superheated mud. Yeah.
Welcome to hell, Blofeld.
I don't even know what the point of the green mud and putting someone, like, were they trying to cast him? Like, I'm confused as to what's going on.
I think that,
here.
yeah, the plan was to make casts of his face. I think that's what it was, because you see off to the side they've got like all these like prosthetics and stuff.
And apparently the green mud was potatoes and something else to color it. I don't remember what it was they used to color it, but they said that they didn't realize using something like that the smell would be so bad. And the poor guy having to be in it like
for like a full day and a half.
Yeah. They said the set was just so rank from these potatoes. And like, I love hearing stories about that, especially like with, I don't remember what particular movie it was, but like they'll use barbecue for like blood and guts and stuff. And
Texas Chainsaw. They were like sitting in that farmhouse with rotting meat for like 4 days,
and it smelled really bad. They didn't have extra costumes, so everybody was wearing the same sweat drenched clothes all the time.
There's that story about Bruce Campbell finishing, like he would like sleep in his costume so that they wouldn't have to keep reapplying the Caro syrup and stuff like on his and then finally he said one night I was like, I gotta take a shower, and I reached up to unbutton my shirt and it just tore in half. Like he's like the whole thing just like fell into shreds.
I can, like, that's part of making movies. Like, I'm starting to really like watching so much behind the scenes editing now. Like I do, like I watch movies completely different. I think about what was going on set,
totally,
and shit like that now. And just like I've heard so many bad stories about things that just started to like rot and smell on set that I'm like, better you than me, guys.
Totally.
But I mean, I do like the idea that they had for the original script for this, where Goldfinger's brother would have come in. I found that pretty interesting. And you said that this one was like a return to form for a lot of people. So it makes me think that On Her Majesty's Secret Service was kind of the Halloween Ends of the Bond series in 1971.
Sure.
People were happy to see their man back on screen, where
I don't
a lot
know,
of people were pissed.
I feel like Die Another Day is the Halloween Ends of Bond movies, because they spend half the movie trying to set up Halle Berry as a new leading character. Jinx is really the Corey Cunningham of the Bond franchise. No, I love it's so strange because they really do try to go from the beginning. They're like, okay, we're going back to formula.
Back to formula.
They take M, like we start with an M scene, M kind of berating him, and very much sort of like, okay, Blofeld's dead now, so can you just be normal going forward?
My note here is M seems more fed up with Bond shit than ever now.
Yeah.
Refreshing to hear there's one subject you're not an expert on.
Which is another thing where it's like, okay, we're definitely sweeping Tracy under the rug here, because if M was any kind of human being, he'd acknowledge that, like, okay, you've gotten revenge for the murder of your wife. Bond's being a know-it-all. He knows everything about the sherry, because I think it's because he's a Highlander, and he's just like he very much does like the bottled in 1875.
Well, my note to that was just to take a play out of your book. I was like, Bond's a fucking scamp in this movie, man. Like,
he really is. He can't stop.
And it's constant throughout this entire movie.
He's always got a joke. He's always
the smartest guy in the room. I'm gonna tell you a little quip about everything that's happening. But
can you imagine if this was how Blofeld died? Like, if that's the last time we saw him, like, how disappointing would that be?
I mean, we'll get to the end of this movie eventually too, but yeah, like I was just thinking, I was like, if this is really how they're going to end Blofeld, this is just so like not what I want. It was it was like Jamie and Cersei Lannister all over again. I was like, that motherfucker deserved way worse than that.
Yep.
You know. And but no, I mean, they instantly, we have this little opening with Bond getting his revenge, and then we're on to the plot of this movie, and it's so jarring. It just kind of gave me whiplash.
And we're just sitting in like a study with three guys talking about the diamond trade. It's making this is another bit of camp, I think, because he's talking about how everything's up to code. We make sure no one's stealing, everyone's taken care of, and we're cutting to, these workers in the mines like stealing diamonds,
putting diamonds in their mouth, and selling them to the
dentist, and this leads us into the introduction of my favorite characters in this movie.
I'm Mr. Wind. This is Mr. Kidd.
I'm right there with you.
Bruce Glover, the father of Crispin Glover, as Mr. Wint, and Mr. Kidd is played by Putter Smith, a jazz musician.
Well, I worked with Burt Bacharach. I've recorded with Sonny and Cher. I did the Phil Spector records and the Righteous Brothers, Lost That Love and Feeling. I'm on that. And, but that really wasn't my main thing. Our main thing was jazz.
Not an actor. It shows in his performance. Mm-hmm. But I think he's so interesting. Like I was listening to this podcast. Matt Gorley used to do a podcast called I Was There Too, where he talks about, where he talks with each of the, people who were in small roles or small scenes in big movies. And he had a whole episode with Putter Smith where Putter Smith said, like, I was playing with Thelonious Monk at the time. I was, he was a jazz, a bass guitarist. Like he played bass in that band.
I worked with Thelonious Monk. One night, Guy Hamilton came into Shelley's Manhole in L.A.
And Guy, who was a jazz fan, seen Thelonious Monk. There was Putter playing, and he went, "That's one of the guys."
Randomly, we're like, "I think you should come read for this part," and he thought it was a joke the whole time because he said my wife was an actor. She was auditioning a bunch, and then I literally play a show, and these guys are like, "Hey, you want to be in a James Bond movie?" And again, it's that kind of thing where like there's something very sweet but also sinister about him at the same time that I find so fascinating. But
they're a major factor that plays into me thinking this movie is very camp and cheese.
Sure.
But their performances are endearing to that for me. Like,
yes,
I don't dislike them in this movie. I just kind of, it's the way that the tone is just so off in
all
this
over
movie.
the place. Yeah.
And there's times when I'm laughing when I feel like I shouldn't be laughing.
Right.
And the one-liners are just like, some of them work and some of them don't.
Yeah.
Even some of the ones that Mr. Wint and Mr. Kit have, like, I'm laughing at them, but I'm like, God, did we really need to write that joke in here? Like,
right.
Sometimes it's a little off kilter, and that's. But I love their performances though.
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
even though basically both of them weren't actors, like.
Well, Bruce Glover definitely was. Like, that's the interesting thing, is that they cast this guy who's like a very self-serious actor with a dude w's never acted before in his life.
Yeah.
And somehow they kind of work off each other really well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of debate also about whether these are caricatures or they're meant to be. I mean, they are the first. I mean, aside, I guess, from Pussy Galore, they're the first like openly queer characters in a Bond movie. Yeah. And they're straight up, sociopaths and murderers.
Right.
But I think the thing that helps in their depiction is that they are depicted as a truly loving couple. Like, they genuinely, like, that first moment after they kill the dentist with the scorpion, they hold hands and like run off together. Like, they're so happy to be together. And like, can you imagine? I'm going to be a henchman, and I find the henchman that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And I whenever I watch these characters, they are villains, but I'm always just like, good for them. They found each other.
This sounds like a stage play we should put together. Like, I found love in murder.
Right. Oh man, I love it. Like they kill this guy with a scorpion. They blow up a helicopter.
He was bitten by the bug.
Right. Yeah, he was bitten by the bug. That's all of his deliveries are like that. It's so good.
I love all their just complete monotone delivery to each other.
Absolutely.
It's I find them more threatening in this movie than Blofeld, honestly.
Oh, totally. There's moments where Bruce Glover will like just give like a cold stare that is so scary. And there's also something very funny about Mr. Kidd's like empty smile.
Yeah. And then you'll see them like at the fucking gravestones just sitting there playing with the flower.
Yeah.
It's so goofy and
I
weird.
love when Mr. Kidd goes, Miss K seems quite attractive. And Mr. Wint goes,
he just looks over for a woman.
For a lady. Yeah, it's really good. I love these characters. And like they were like the main reason I was looking forward to revisiting this movie. But we learned that like there are fears that the diamond market is going to be ruined by these thefts and these killings and
well, they dropped the line. It's like funny how everyone who seems to touch these diamonds ends up dead.
Right. And Bond is just like, okay, so I basically have to find this guy, Peter Franks, this professional smuggler. And he says, do we know who his contacts are? And M just looks at him and goes, we do function in your absence, 007.
That's when I wrote the note that M's just fucking over him. Like,
it's so good. Yeah, M's got real Q energy in this scene.
Bernard Lee he's looking pretty old in this one.
He's pretty tired. Yeah.
And there's the whole thing about his liver giving out and whatnot, where Bond's being a scamp about the sherry.
Right. That's right. I forgot about that.
But that's the other thing that I found a little jarring about this one is this one primarily is taking place in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get our traditional in the office scene where he throws the hat with Moneypenny and all that.
The one scene with Moneypenny was part of like a last minute shoot.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, and you're so used to seeing her in the office and them having their little flirts with each other.
To the point where we saw her flirt with him in a submarine office, like just to get the office scene one time.
Right. But I mean, I found it kind of fun that they kind of put her in the field for a second, but
yeah, to give him his fake papers as Peter Franks. And it's an interesting moment. And apparently Lois Maxwell's agent had been holding out for a better deal because they were like, she has to like stop everything she's doing and kind of wait around for several days for these, you know, short scenes.
Right.
And people love Moneypenny at this point. Like, let's pay her a little bit more. And basically it got down to the wire where they were going to just recast Moneypenny or write out or cut the scene. And they were like, no, she'll do it. But she had already dyed her hair black for another movie. Okay. And so that's why she also shows up wearing a hat. And it's like this whole thing. So it's kind of a bummer. It's also a bummer that this is the last scene between Lois Maxwell and Sean Connery's Bond.
Oh, you break my heart. I was actually going to ask you, because I'm curious, you know, moving forward, how many, you know, stars end up in the same character roles moving forward when we get into Roger Moore.
She'll be around for a little bit, but the fact that like this is the last time she shares the screen with Connery is kind of a bummer.
And it's funny watching the behind the scenes where they're talking about this being Connery's last official Bond movie.
Right.
All the Bond girls, all of the actresses that played Bond girls, they had all these good things to say about Connery.
He's a fabulous person and a marvelous actor.
Handsome, kind, charming, with these big magnetic eyes that had a bit of irony to them.
The first and the best, I think. He's A, the sexiest thing on two legs. B, he looks terrific. C, he's got such a wicked twinkle. D, he's a very good actor. And he's very virile.
He's a very good pal to have as your leading man, you know. To be his co-star is to feel almost protected. And Sean was just wonderful. He was James Bond to me.
Putter Smith said that he was a total sweetheart during the shooting of this movie too, which is like kind of surprising when you consider that he didn't want to be there.
Right. And you know, I don't know, man, like the feel of this movie, again, coming off on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I'm just like, I'm usually getting sucked into the plot as we're moving forward. But when we get into all the talk about the diamonds, I'm just kind of like, let's move it forward. Let's keep it moving here. Like, like there really wasn't a whole lot selling me moving into this.
Do you think you would have liked this more if you had seen it out of sequence? Like if it wasn't like on the heels of Secret Service?
I'm curious. I don't know, because, you know, I've mentioned to you before, whenever we do these episodes and I go back and do the edits on them, I kind of see things I didn't see before. And then I'll realize, like I would, with our Dr. No episode, like I didn't respond to Dr. No all that well.
Right.
in the edit, I was like, this movie's actually pretty freaking good.
And that guy's good. Yeah, you're like you like Joseph Weisman's performance more when you were like rewatching it for the edit.
I'm just rewatching it and I'm like, okay, that dude's putting it on. Like I like this. So I'm curious once I start editing this episode how I'll feel about this movie, even though right now I'm not really on this side of this movie.
Well, I gotta ask how you feel about Jill St. John as Tiffany Case.
Weren't you a blonde when I came in?
Could be.
Because I fucking love her.
I've professed my love for Dame Diana Rigg.
Sure.
From On Her Majesty's Secret Service. At this point, I would definitely say she's my favorite Bond girl. I like her, but she's a little lackluster for me. Like, she genuinely is just there for kind of, well, not really comic relief, because I don't find comedy in her performance. But it seems like the things she's doing in the movie are just making me go, what the fuck? Like, what is she doing here? Like, she's just like a pawn in the game of this diamond smuggling heist thing that I'm just like, she does not know what she's doing. She's in over her head.
She's a little more involved in the novel, but in the movie, she's definitely much more of a middleman and is like being lied to on every side.
Which, and again, is very kind of off-putting because when you're introduced to her, she seems like she really has it together.
She's got different costumes. She's got like a high-tech fingerprinting machine in her closet. But I think the key to Jill St. John, and this is the case in everything I've seen her in, I've loved her since I was a kid because she's in the very first episode of Batman 66.
You shake a pretty mean cake, Batman.
As the Riddler's like henchwoman who tragically dies in the Batcave. Like she falls into like the nuclear pile or the atomic pile in the Batcave. But like her delivery's like this, and it's very fun. It's very fun for me. And I don't know. There's something. Just the way she says her lines is camp to me. Like,
keep leaning on that tooter, Charlie, and you're gonna get a shot in the mouth.
You know, that scene later on in the movie is so good. But no, you're right. She seems totally in control when she first starts the movie, and by the end of it, she's sort of just like flopping around, making mistakes. And I mean, I do love this little bit where he asks her, like, "Weren't you a blonde when I came in?"
And then she ends up being a redhead. He's
like, "You don't mind, do you?" And he goes, "No."
He offends her as a redhead, and this is my natural hair.
Yeah, she's like, you don't mind, do you?" And he goes, "No, providing the collars and cuffs match," which is like an insane line of dialogue.
But her introduction, I'm almost thinking they're introducing us to another Pussy Galore, or even another
or something.
Yeah, like someone who's gonna be like in it and knows what's going on.
I mean, she does all like multiple power moves, right? She comes back out in lingerie and a robe, tells him, "I don't dress for the hired help." Yeah. I love these, and you know me, I love these scenes where like she's dusting for Prince to see who he is. He's smelling the powder on the glass. Like they're both sizing each other up. And then she kind of loses this guile as the movie goes along.
And it's really bad when after, we find out that Bond has taken out Frank so he can imitate him and get in on this whole diamond smuggling thing. And then we find out Franks has actually woken up from whatever Bond did to him and is on his way to meet her. And then you get this fight scene in the elevator. And this is where the degradation of her character starts for me. Like, we get this terribly choreographed fight scene. Like, I am missing the fight choreography from On Her Majesty's Secret Service so much here. And like, you just, Connery is just jostling around, and I don't know, like, even, it's not even so much Connery. Like, I feel like Bond is even off of his game in this movie.
And I'm confused by the geography of this fight, right? Like she's looking in from like upstairs, then suddenly she's downstairs and next to him. It's really weird. Leading into that fight though, we do I mean, you're right. Bond's like very weirdly off his game. Like he's calling Q to find out, what the plan is. Q is hanging out with a bunch of missiles in the background.
I love that you can see him doing modifications to the car in the back and everything. Like that shit, like that's what I love in this, is all the background stuff you can find.
And Q very casually is just like, oh yes, Frank's escaped and killed a guard. You didn't hear about this? And Bond, in order to like sneak back in, first does a really silly bit where he pretends to make out with himself, and then he pretends to be German.
Terrible accent.
Accidentally breaks the glass, which like tips off that he's about to be in the fight. But the thing that's the most confusing about this to me, Tiffany finds Bond plants his wallet on the corpse, and she pulls out his ID and she goes,
You just killed James Bond.
Okay, if she like that's my thing. Like if she's so integrated in what's going on here and she knows who James Bond is
that who it was?
She should know that that's not James. Like I don't know, like something about that really hit me the wrong way.
Sure, that's my question too. Does she know does she know who James Bond is because she's adjacent to the criminal underworld, or is James Bond a celebrity now? Because like he also has a Playboy Club card.
Which I think was just the filmmakers going, this dude's so sex that he has the Playboy card.
Can you guys believe it? James Bond.
With those eyebrows. His fucking eyebrows are...
It's so funny. It actually warranted a bit on IMDb trivia where it was like, this is the first film where Connery didn't trim his eyebrows. And it's like, what? You're not gonna do him like that. Yeah, but they're like, okay, well, like we have a new plan. We're gonna put the diamonds inside this body. I'm gonna pretend to be his brother. We're gonna take it to Slumber Inc., which is this funeral parlor that's also fencing the diamonds. This is where we meet our latest Felix Leiter.
Well, Felix Leiter, you old fraud.
One after the other. Let's just keep
Norman
them out.
Burton. I'd fully forgotten that it's so weird. I've seen this movie several times and I fully forgot Felix Leiter is a character in this movie.
Well, it's not even just that. Like we know Felix Leiter is a character in the Bond universe, but it's so funny that every time Felix is around, we have to have Bond go, "Oh, Felix, it's
you old son of a bitch!" Like, yeah. Alimentary, my dear Mr. Leiter. Terrible digestive joke saying that the diamonds are in the stomach. We also meet these gangsters that work for Slumber Inc., one of whom is played by Sid motherfucking Haig.
Young Sid Haig, man.
Yeah.
Like I had to take a double take there. I was like, well, that's him? Like,
yeah, isn't that wild?
Like, he's kind of handsome.
Yeah. He's got Sinatra vibes.
I think he has one line in the movie too. It's like, what does he say? He goes,
I had a brother.
Small world, isn't it?
That's my favorite, maybe my favorite line in the movie. I had a brother. But yeah, I mean, we get taken to this. We get taken to the funeral parlor. I like the production design here. The upside down stained glass diamond.
I was wondering, like, I don't know, like I know that you have seen these movies quite a bit, and I've started looking at set design on things like that and the stuff people will put in to kind of play into the theme of the movie.
Right.
And that was the first thing that hit me in the funeral home. I was like, that was a nice little touch with the diamond there.
Yeah. This one doesn't have so much of the like really lavish production design I like, because I feel like most of the time we're just in Vegas or we're on an oil rig, you know.
And a lot of the stuff they shot, I believe, was actual houses in like in California and whatnot.
They shot like the mansion they go to later to rescue Willard Whyte was Kirk Douglas's house.
Yeah,
that's where he fights Thumper and Bambi.
And apparently, I saw this in the behind the scenes. That rock that Thumper's sitting on when he comes in, they had to build the house around that rock.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Like they didn't move. That's a very unique architectured house.
Huh.
Yeah. And so like they saw it, the production team saw it, and they're like, "Oh, we definitely need to film.
We got to use that. We got to have that rock in the movie." How these are shot.
But the funeral parlor scene is cool.
Yeah.
But again, like there's some things that happen at the end of this sequence that I'm like, how does that logistically make sense? Notably, like, you know, we've got Mr. Kit and Mr.
Wint.
Mr. Wint and Mr. Kit are on the scene as all of this is going down. I kind of like that it's very secretive about the cremation and the urn and the diamonds being in there. That's all fun.
Yeah, and you got to go to this specific tomb to get your payout.
The way he describes that too, it just seems so hokey.
Yeah.
But Bond seems lost too. Like when he's in there,
he's just trying to follow along, and then Bond gets knocked out like 4 times in this movie by people who should not be able to get the drop on him. It's a little sad. Also of note, reportedly the very last scene that Connery filmed for this movie, his last scene in an official James Bond movie, is him being loaded into a coffin. Which is kind of appropriate, I think.
Fitting. But, Mr. Kit and Mr. Wint put him in a coffin and start up the cremation machine.
Yeah. And some super operatic music, which I'm like, who's going to come here and choose this?
But what I have a problem with is they get him in there and the fire starts and then...
he's fully burning.
Like, the coffin is on fire.
Yeah. And then Shady Tree just opens it up and is like, hey.
You dirty double-crossing limey Finkos, goddamn diamonds are phonies.
Where are the real diamonds?
Where are the real diamonds at? Man, Shady Tree. What a character.
I gotta get back to the casino so I can do my comedy act. Where are them real diamonds at? No, I just have a big problem with that. It's like the continuity again. Like, this fucking coffin was just burning. There's not even any, like... scorch marks on the coffin when he gets out of it.
No, yeah, the craftsmanship is unbelievable.
And we'll get to another one later that happens that I'm like, what was the point of doing all of this?
Yeah,
but
just to have a quick scare, I guess.
Yeah, but anyway, like, I don't know, like, this is where I'm at with this movie.
Yeah,
it's just like, okay, like, I know the diamonds are involved somehow.
Yeah,
but let's get to it already.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't because now it's time to go to the White House, the casino hotel where Shady Tree is a stand-up comic, and again, this is another like weird little detour because we see Tree do the worst stand-up routine I've ever seen in my life, and then he's murdered off screen by Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd because they're wrapping up all the loose ends in the smuggling ring.
That's most annoying.
I have a question about Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint.
Yeah.
We never see them affiliated or talking to or anything.
They never share the screen with Blofeld.
Right. But we're meant to understand that
they're his main henchmen. Yeah.
I just find that so weird. We've always seen the bizarre henchmen interacting with Blofeld.
Yeah, and this is Hans.
In this movie, it's just these lone two guys are doing what they're doing, and like I'm just supposed to assume that they're
supposed to infer
Blofeld.
that they're attached to the operation. Yes.
Yeah. Like I almost feel like this movie would have been better had you just made Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd the villains.
Yeah.
Like they're involved in this diamond thing somehow, and they're the reason all this is going on. Like
they're trying to cut out all the middlemen so they can escape with the diamonds. That's a better movie.
Makes a better movie. Like
the idea of doing this thing where he's looking for like the big boss, but it's just these two henchmen who've decided to go rogue. That's a brilliant idea for a movie.
And the fact that it would have been these particular two henchmen, like these two goofballs who are spouting one-liners to each other and in love with each other, like
the anti-James in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like it's so unlikely of a villain for James to have, but if they can get the drop on him, which they do more than once in this movie, it's like it's way more impactful and way more interesting than Blofeld again.
And they're so much more entertaining.
Yeah. And it's like part of me is like, okay, why didn't you just kill Blofeld in the beginning? But I wouldn't have been happy with the way you took him out then.
Right.
So like I just again, like this movie shoehorning Blofeld in after what happened on Her Majesty's just feels wrong. It just feels out of place.
It does. It also feels out of place that we have an extended sequence where Bond plays craps and Plenty O'Toole is just trying to hang out with whoever's winning.
Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are.
Plenty O'Toole.
Named after your father, perhaps?
It's funny and degrading to her character when she's with the one guy, walks away, she hears money, and goes right over to Bond.
And I gotta give a little shout out to my Silver Linings co-host Dustin Goes to Hollywood. Plenty O'Toole is his favorite Bond girl of the series.
You're a terrific guy. A little weird, but a terrific guy.
Look, she's gorgeous, but man, there's no character here.
No, there's nothing. It makes for a shocking reveal to Tiffany later that she's in the movie.
She's plenty exists to motivate Tiffany to be on James's side once everything kind of comes out. But like, I don't know. We do get this really great bit though, where the guys chuck her out of the window.
Exceptionally fine shot.
I didn't know there was a pool down there.
That one made me laugh. And apparently, like, they shot that at a hotel.
I started thinking about the fact that I was going to be jumping into a pool, basically nude. And then everybody was running around saying, oh, you don't have to be worried because we're going to be shooting this in the middle of the night. Who will be up then? And I thought, yeah, that's right. I mean, who's going to be up? It's Las Vegas. The whole world is up in the middle of the night, and they're all gathered around the windows looking at the pool area.
And it's weirdly upsetting the way she dies, considering her sister was Natalie Wood, who died of drowning, like very famously. And I mean, it's kind of haunting to watch that shot where they find her later in the movie.
Yeah.
And apparently this was also, she took on water while they were filming it. Like there were a couple of bits where she got really scared.
I'd heard, I mean, they actually had her tied to a thing at the bottom of the pool, and they had a contraption that would lift her head up so she could get air, because apparently, like, she just had to stay in the pool while they were shooting. But there was an incline in the pool, and apparently the rock just kept sliding down. So she started to take on water.
So like over the course of an hour, she slowly started to Yeah. But they were able to get her out really quickly. But that's so scary. Like, bolt that shit down.
Right. Again, stuff that happens on movie sets that I'm just like, ooh, like making movies is serious business sometimes.
Scary shit. Yeah. Here's a power move. Tiffany, like all the boys, the Slumber Inc. boys back out when they see Tiffany Case. No, I'm still curious about why that is.
That's what I'm confused about. Again, like, it made me feel like these guys work for her.
Right. That would seem to be the implication, right? Like they're scared of her.
Which would make her, again, like she would be in a position of power.
Yeah.
But again, we get to her and it's just a love scene between her and Bond.
Yeah.
And her, like,
he starts stripping just while they're talking. And he's just like, no, she wants to see this. Like, that's essentially what this is.
I think my favorite one-liner from Sean Connery in this, though, is when they do get in the room and throw her out the window. He goes, you caught me with more than my hands up.
More than my hands up. Yeah, that's a good bit.
Who does she work for? Like, is she in it on her own? Like, I'm so confused. And it's funny because my next note that I wrote here is this movie is so fucking confusing.
Yeah. It is. I mean, there's too many layers, right? Like there's too many characters who don't necessarily connect with one another, or you're confused. Like you shouldn't be super confused about the relationships between the villains. And or confused about which character is a villain and which one is, being lied to or led astray. And it gets even more confusing because the next like 20 minutes of the movie is essentially just an ad for Circus Circus.
Yeah, this is where I'm kind of starting to fade watching this movie.
We're just doing an ad. We're just doing Visit Las Vegas.
Like they do the whole shot where they have the elephant walking behind Bond.
Playing slots.
And I'm like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't need that in my Bond movie.
No. We also get like, but I do like all this stuff where like Tiffany's being asked to go like play the squirt gun game, the water gun game. She says a wild line where the kid is just like, you cheated, and she goes,
blow up your pants,
which I've never heard in my life.
Yeah, me neither.
We get that whole sequence where there's like a guy trying to convince these kids that a woman is going to turn into an ape because she's been experimented on, and like, which is like a funny, like it's meant to be like this whole carnival atmosphere, but like we're spending a lot of time on stuff that does not factor into the plot.
Yeah, and I thought it was in bad taste with the whole like woman turning into a gorilla. It happens to be
1,000%.
Happens to be a black woman.
Yeah,
and it's
rough, and it apparently originally led to another sequence in which like the CIA is trying to get through there, and Zamora, the the woman is like, hey, you can't go back through here. And he goes, get out of our way, ma'am. We're agents. And she's like, oh, I'm looking for an agent. Like, so there was apparently like a whole comedy payoff to that. And then Felix like brushes past her and she's like, I guess they hated the act or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, give this lady a little bit more to do than that. If you're going to make us sit through this, give us the payoff. But yeah, it's so strange.
But I mean, I didn't catch this till the second watch, but I was confused the first time because these guys are following her. And I'm like, who the fuck are these guys? And they're with the CIA. They're keeping an eye on her. They don't want her to get away with the diamonds. But again, the first watch, I'm like, what's happening? Like, I don't understand why these guys are following her. So yeah, it's another bad scene here.
It's just a lot of it's a lot of like shoe leather for a scene that's should be straightforward, right?
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of code names, code words that we haven't really been privy to. And then the next thing we really learn is that Plenty's been murdered because Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd thought that she was Tiffany, and that's kind of what convinces Tiffany to finally help Bond.
Yeah.
And they see the casino manager, again, another extra character, Bert Saxby, being handed the diamonds by another character. And we get like the exposition dump that Willard Whyte, much like Howard Hughes, this casino manager, has not been seen outside of his tower in decades or whatever. David Low Pan.
You mean the David Low Pan that's chairman of the National Orient Bank and owns the Wing Kong Import-Export Trading Company, but who's so reclusive that no one's even laid eyes on this guy in years?
Who the hell are you anyway?
The head of the Wing Kong Exchange. But that's essentially like what it is. But yeah, no, they follow him, and then we get this really I love this sequence where we just let Tiffany go Karen for like 5 minutes to like hold up the gas station.
Yeah,
while
he says to cut him off.
Yeah.
Which again, like this whole scene, he tells her to cut them off. She's bickering with the guy driving the van. You can see Bond get in the back of the van. The whole van shakes. It's like nobody would not notice this motherfucker getting in the. Not to mention the guy behind the van watching Bond get in the back of the van.
The gas station attendant doesn't even be like, hey, there's a guy in your car.
Right. It's like that beginning scene of Urban Legend. It's like,
someone's in the back seat!
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a great way to start a horror movie? There's someone in the back seat and James Bond pops out.
Shut up.
He just pops out and goes, smacks somebody. Or chokes them with a bikini top.
Yeah, that's the opening. He doesn't have the axe. He's just holding a random bikini top. So Bond hitches a ride to this secret facility, and I like all of this stuff. He charms his way into getting a radiation shield, which I guess you can just put this little beeper in your pocket and that protects you from radiation. But he like blows his cover. But I love that he's posing as this guy named Dr. Hergesheimer. And this was an inside joke because director Guy Hamilton, whenever he couldn't think of the name for something, he'd call it a Hergesheimer. So any kind of like doohickey or like piece of equipment, he's like, oh, and then you put the Hergesheimer over here. And then like that was like his joke, so that they added that into the movie. But yeah, I mean, Bond's not really finding out anything here.
This scene is another example of Connery sleepwalking through this movie.
They're doing some kind of energy research, and he has to quickly escape because he blows his cover. And he runs into a room where they're faking the moon landing.
Yeah. I was like, is this what I think it is?
Yeah. I love that they don't ever explain it, but it is so bizarre. Like, now we're to believe that Spectre is like faking moon landings and shit.
Yeah. And this is again not so much even Connery, just with the character of Bond in this movie.
Yeah.
Is I've seen Bond charm and like give this charismatic like he can get through anything.
Yeah.
He can disguise himself. He can do anything he needs to do to find out what he needs to find out.
Mm-hmm.
But in this, like, he seems so.
It's me, Dr. Hergesheimer.
He just seems like he's fumbling with what he's trying to get through.
Some of it's the script, but some of it is Connery not really adding more to it.
It's Connery going, I'm going to play it like I don't know what's going on, because in the movie, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, and then you get this whole chase sequence with this moon
buggy.
Which,
so they had a moon buggy from NASA that they used for this. And the producers were like, that thing doesn't look silly enough. Let's add some wiggly arms to it. So he's got this like it's like riding through the desert with these like jangly arms. And I was watching this with my folks, and my dad goes, man, those Galaxy 500s are not doing so hot in this chase.
But I mean, just, you've got all these cars chasing after it, flipping over because they can't handle the terrain.
And then we got three-wheelers going super slow while really goofy music plays in the background. This is not one of John Barry's best scores.
Connery gets on that three-wheeler, and it looks like he's on a kid's tricycle.
Yeah.
It's bad, dude.
Yeah, it's if you swapped Sean Connery with Robin Williams in this scene, like, it's a better movie. Immediately.
Could you imagine Robin Williams as Bond?
Now it's all I want. Yeah. Oh, pussy galore. Sounds like my kind of day. That's my terrible Robin Williams impression. R.I.P. indeed. And it leads to he manages to make an escape. Tiffany picks him up in her Mustang and they drive off. And she says one of my other favorite lines in the movie.
No regrets, but when you start stealing moon machines from Willard Whyte, goodbye and good luck.
All right, I want to talk about Willard Whyte because we haven't really gotten into this yet. I mean,
Jimmy Dean.
Jimmy fucking Dean.
That Jimmy Dean. Yes, listeners.
Yeah, the guy who provides you sausage.
The sausage man himself.
I'm not familiar with him as a person. So watching the movie, I didn't know that was the real Jimmy Dean.
Sure.
Until I watched the behind the scenes, and I was like, holy fuck, that's why this dude sounds like he sounds.
Yeah, he broke in as a country music singer, and did some acting and stuff. But yeah, these days you say that name and you're thinking of sausage.
Yeah, you're thinking of breakfast in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But and he doesn't show up in the movie until later, but we'll talk about him then.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this whole plot with the White, Mr. White, and him controlling what's going on with this diamond smuggling things. And then we get the traditional Bond, someone's answering the phone, talking, giving orders to the henchmen.
Right.
Therein lies, Blofeld's not really dead. Like, you can figure that shit out. You've seen it 6 times already, yeah. And but he's got this country ass accent.
Yeah, yep.
Don't bother me with details, Bert. Just get me the diamond.
The whole voice changing aspect of this plot is just so silly to me.
I mean, we get this crazy car chase that goes on a little too long, but it's
that has another very big continuity issue.
Oh yeah, because the car goes up on its like left side, goes through that alleyway and then sits back down on it, or comes back out the other side on its right wheels, right?
Yeah,
something like that.
They shot this on the real Las Vegas highways or roads and whatnot, and
I'll have a second unit and they will get the shot for you.
A second unit films the stunt in June. The footage, unfortunately, includes Las Vegas street crowds, police, and other problems. A reshoot is scheduled.
They redid it later.
The American stuntmen, unfortunately, cannot perform the stunt. A French team is called in, but they do the stunt on the opposite set of wheels.
But they did it the wrong way round. To this day, every time I see it, my heart goes in my mouth.
Their fix for that is to show us a shot of them in the car, move the camera angle, and you're supposed to assume that the car went up on its other wheels in the alleyway.
That's insane.
It's like that right there just kind of shows you, like, I don't know if it's really like this is what we had to do to get the movie done, or it was just lazy.
That's kind of what it feels like. It's like, man, what are we gonna do? Let's hope no one notices. Yeah, I do appreciate that leads to a really fun joke with the cop also trying to do it and immediately flipping over. That's very funny. But
there's a couple of times when you see cars doing things that Bond has done, and potentially they should be able to do the same thing, and their cars just get completely wrecked.
But he's just good at it, like he knows how to do it.
Like when they're going through that chase, he does a ramp. He goes on a ramp and jumps over a bunch of cars.
Oh, right,
and then
yes.
The cop decides he's going to do it too, and he does it and just fucking flips over.
Just like Hot Rod. Speaking of the movie being kind of lazy in terms of explanations and cohesion, the next scene starts with Tiffany being like, "What are we doing in this suite at the the White Hotel or the White House?" And I literally wrote down, "Great fucking question, Tiffany." I don't know. I guess Felix wants to keep an eye on you there.
Giant fucking hotel room.
Huge,
oh my god,
gorgeous. I want to stay there. I also want I want all of her robes. She always looks so comfortable. Almost always looks comfortable in this movie, and I'm jealous. But Bond decides to head to the top to see Willard Whyte, and we get that great grapple stunt. I really dig all the stuff with him like hanging onto the elevator.
Would have been a perfect role for Adam West. He's used to grappling up buildings. He could have just did the Batman walk up the fucking tower.
Holy sausages. But this is our review. I mean, he gets into the room and we hear the unmistakable voice of Jimmy Dean.
You got any personal business to take care of in there, you go right ahead. First, I suspect you're wearing a hog leg. Would you mind standing up and taking it off?
And so then Bond goes in and finds himself staring down two Blofelds.
Good evening, Mr. Bond. Blofeld.
Where we learn that one of these guys is real. One of them's his double. And nobody else wants to be a double because they don't last very long. Which is a really funny bit.
Yeah, and he's like, he goes through the trouble of explaining to Bond that you took out the other double that I had.
Yeah.
I had 3 or 2, now I only have 1.
Now I only have 1, and I'm using this voice box to perfectly imitate Willard Whyte. And but he says this really made me angry, especially considering we just watched a movie where he developed a virus that was gonna wipe out half of the world.
Yeah.
And was hypnotizing women and definitely mad scientist territory. He says, "Don't ask me to tell you how it works. Science was never my strong suit." And I'm like, yes, it fucking you that's your thing. You're the Lex Luthor of James Bond.
That was Telly Savalas' strong suit.
Not
Charles Gray's.
Perhaps you've mistaken me for Donald Pleasance.
And we touched on how many different Blofelds there are in the series that I wasn't aware. I figured we would have more Donald Pleasance, and I figured Donald Pleasance would be my top Blofeld. Right. Telly Savalas has got it, man. That dude's the best Blofeld in my opinion.
Yeah, it's Savalas, Pleasance, Gray by default, I guess.
Yeah, I mean
at this point.
And then you don't really have anybody playing him in the other movies. He's just a nameless person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean Telly Savalas and Charles Gray has nothing on him.
Yeah, and I like Charles Gray as an actor. Yeah, man, I don't know what he's going for here. He feels as into this part as Connery is into playing Bond. Just feels like it's the wrong pairing of actor and role.
Well, in a way, how on Her Majesty's Secret Service they were kind of like, we're gonna stick to this source material. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it the way we think we need to do it, and kind of forget that we've did some other things in these movies.
Right.
It almost feels like Diamonds Are Forever is like if you wouldn't have had the opening sequence, if you wouldn't have had Blofeld in it, it's almost like they're just kind of skipping over on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Because as you said earlier, they don't even mention Tracy in this movie.
Ever. Yeah.
You just see Bond going after Blofeld.
And where On Her Majesty's Secret Service was extremely close to the novel, this one... Tom Mankiewicz is I think maybe the novel takes up 40 minutes of screen time in this movie. I mean, the book had completely different main villains. Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd are in the book, and Tiffany Case is as well. But a big part of it was involved like horse races that were being fixed by the villains, which that's later brought into.
That comes back to View for a Kill, I think,
Yes,
doesn't it?
yeah. And
see, I know a little bit of Bond stuff.
Yeah. And there's a whole set piece where Bond has to go to this Wild West ghost town called Specterville, and like the book's also goofy as fuck, but like it almost makes you think like if you want to get away from On Her Majesty's, just actually adapt the novel, leave Blofeld out of it.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed it much more. Like,
yeah, I totally agree.
Honestly, like they're looking for a new Bond now. They need some new screenwriters. Like, Nathan, we should throw our names in the hat.
Yeah,
like,
I think you should play Bond. I'll play Moneypenny.
It would definitely be a new Bond that no one's ever seen before.
He's different. This Bond will fuck you up.
He's got a beard and a belly.
You wouldn't believe what kind of VHS tapes this Bond has. But well, yeah, Bond also reminds us that Connery's Bond is a piece of shit because he kicks that cat and then shoots the double in the face with the grapple gun. And I do like this little exchange where Blofeld says, "Right idea, Mr. Bond," and James says, "Wrong pussy." Blofeld puts him in the elevator and he says, "You press L, Mr. Bond. The word lobby begins with L."
You know, it seems like why would you even need to say that? But
it's so funny.
But with how stupid Bond's been through this movie, it's almost like, I need to let him know that the L means lobby. Like, Bond's just not on his game in this movie.
I don't know that you can dress yourself anymore, 007. No, it's fun. Oh, also I noticed this thing was pointed out in trivia online, but like you can tell which one is the real Blofeld because he always says Bond and the doubles always say 007. Which is kind of fun little bit. But so Mr. Kidd and Mr. Went take Bond out into the desert for the most circuitous execution I've ever seen in a movie. Like,
I guess that was our clue that these guys work for Blofeld.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be obvious, but again, like, it's so weird that these guys, you never see Blofeld instructing them to do anything.
But they're point, just, and the idea is that they're gonna drop him into this tunnel in the landfill and just they hit him with knockout gas, throw him into this tunnel, and then they're going to just let them fill the tunnel in. And I'm like, if you have gas as step one, use poison gas? Wouldn't that make sense as step one?
This all comes back to Seth Green and Austin Powers.
Why don't you just shoot him now? I mean, I'll go get a gun. We'll shoot him together. It'll be fun. Bang! Dead. Done.
Right. But it does lead to a really funny bit where Bond like follows a rat to the exit, and then he goes, I was just out walking my rat and I seem to have lost my way. But this whole sequence reminds me of that bit in the Labyrinth where like Bowie like throws the crystal ball out to the end of the hallway, and then they're just like Hoggle screams like, "Oh no, the cleaners!" And this just like contraption starts coming down the tunnel. Except in that movie, Jennifer Connelly doesn't just jump up on top of it and kick it till it stops. Like everything is really not a problem in this movie.
No, I mean, we know Bond's gonna make it out of the movie. But like, it's still a little jarring when you see that he's not waking up when they start putting this pipe in the ground, and then that shot where everybody's driving away and it's all done, you're like, holy shit, they actually. But Bond almost meets his end twice in this movie by Mr. Kidd and Mr. Went. But again, like, that's the thing that makes me think maybe they're not the greatest henchmen, is because they've already brutally like cold-blooded murdered.
We've seen them murder multiple people easily.
A doctor, a comedian, like all these people, but they won't do it to Bond. Like, it's so weird.
I you know what, I do love this bit where Bond calls Blofeld pretending to be Bert Saxby, and the whole conversation is like, well, you know, this James Bond, he's made of sterner stuff, and I don't know, he's pretty smart, he's kind of a genius. I don't know how we're gonna stop him. I'm really scared of him.
Yeah.
And that's how he gets Willard Whyte's location.
Which he's just been in his beach house.
Yeah, just at his own home. No one ever checked there.
Yeah, no one ever looked, and just in a padlocked room. Like,
I mean, I guess the whole point is that like no one knew that he was missing until now. Like, because Blofeld's been running his operations as Willard Whyte.
Yeah,
but,
and I guess if you're basing it on Howard Hughes, like, makes sense.
That guy was living in a penthouse apartment, collecting his pee in jars, and I mean, like, legitimately, like, and no one was checking on him. This is where we meet Bambi and Thumper.
I honestly like the scene.
It's a good fight. It's fun.
It's a great fight. The girls are doing their best.
Mm-hmm.
Connery's not doing shit. Like,
no, he's doing a couple of little judo throws.
Judo chop.
He's rolling out of the way a little bit, but yeah, it's not all of the energy in this fight is coming from the ladies.
Which makes it even worse when they end up in the pool and he's just holding their heads underwater. It's like,
he straight up drowns two people in front of these 8 CIA agents who do not give a shit.
Well, they don't. Well, at least
no, you're right. They
Thumper
do get out.
doesn't drown. I don't know about the other one. They kind of leave that one up in the air. Bambi's still underwater. We don't know what happened to Bambi. But Thumper lets them know where Whyte is. But
upstairs.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Again, like, we just saw these girls hand Bond's ass to him, and he can just hold them underwater.
Now, it's kind of like, I mean, look, this is fresh in our minds, but it's kind of like this 24-year-old kid punching Michael Myers and holding him down while he takes his mask off.
You're just a guy in a mask.
I want it. I need you to show. There should have been a scene where, like, when. There should have been a scene where Blofeld is just like, I want you to show me how to do it. Like, the Blofeld doppelganger is like, show me how to pet the cat. I need you to show me.
Show me how to stroke your pussy.
Man. Halloween Ends now playing. Yeah, I mean, it's a good action sequence, but you're right. It kind of ends with like Bond can't do anything until all of a sudden he's got it under control.
Yeah. There was one moment in that had me a little taken aback because Bambi does a split right after they threw James through a glass table. And I'm like, she's doing a split
glass there, girl.
Entirely too close to this glass that's on the floor. I'm kind of worried for you. Like, don't get a piece of that stuck somewhere.
Both barefoot, I think.
Yeah. Just doing their gymnastic fighting,
flash dance fighting.
Yeah.
But I mean, so they've rescued Willard Whyte. Saxby's been killed.
Tell him he's fired.
I don't know, like, when Jimmy Dean actually does show up in the movie,
I think he's really fun in this.
The first time I watched it, I was like, what the fuck is this?
It's a big performance, right?
But on the rewatches of this, I was like, I'm kind of digging this. He's kind of leaning into it.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, again, it feels like, what if we did an episode of Batman 66 where the special guest villain was Jimmy Dean, right?
And he takes people out by just shoving sausage in their orifices.
Puts them into a meat grinder.
And you just became today's sausage.
Take that, Dark Knight.
Seems... It seems fitting for a Batman villain, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely. Also fitting for a Batman villain is this little machine that Q makes that just makes you win slots every time.
And all of a sudden, Tiffany's back in our lives. Like, she disappears for 20 minutes, dude.
She's being, the idea is that she's been asked to stay at the hotel, but that means she's just not part of the plot for a while.
Again, makes her character so valueless in this.
I do like that she keeps calling him Mr. Q. I think that's very sweet.
And there's something fun to her, like sitting there going back and forth with Q as he's literally stealing money from
he's not, but he's not taking any of his.
He's not taking any of it.
Yeah.
But I just. And then there's the thing earlier whenever they do the voice changer, and James is giving Q shit for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you've really outdone yourself this time." And he goes, "I made one of these for the kids at Christmas." It's
my grandson. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah.
But she sees a familiar person walking through the casino with a kitty. How does she know to follow?
Evil Mrs. Doubtfire?
How the fuck does she know who Blofeld is?
It's unclear why she's like, I gotta go. Like, she's gotta leave. And then she just gets in the one car that Blofeld's in full drag. And it's a weird bit that doesn't go anywhere. Like, if you...
Well, the way I understood it was she noticed that was Blofeld and followed him out of the casino. But I'm like... Maybe I missed something in my three watches, but
cannot figure out what her motivation is for the last third of this movie, because it seems at some points she's working for Blofeld, then she's working for Bond, then she's swapping tapes by accident. The whole stuff, everything with the tapes was confusing to me. What Bond wanted her to do when he handed it to her. Well, again, because when she swaps it out, I'm like, she's doing it.
Well, it's another level of stuff that you don't need, like you said earlier. Like, these tapes mean nothing to moving our plot forward. Like,
we are 20 minutes away from the end of the movie when we find out that Blofeld has built a laser on a satellite that is going to help him detonate the nuclear armaments on Earth. And the coordinates are fed in through these tapes. And I do really love this bit where they're trying to get in touch with different world leaders. This laser detonates a missile at a Chinese base.
Whatever's happening, Mr. Bond, has started.
Honestly, his delivery of that line is pretty genuine. Like, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, it reminded me. I was talking to my dad about it, and I was like, it's like Southern Fried Ozymandias from Watchmen. It's like, I did it 23 minutes ago.
I kept waiting for the other shoe to fall with his character, though, because he says, I'll take it in the John, and they get into his office. And I kept waiting on him to go in, come back out, and like, he's Blofeld. Like, they changed his face. Like, some kind of traditional Bond shit like that. But that never happened. Like, I could have lived with that a little more than what does actually happen in this movie, honestly.
I do think these bits here, though, are pretty good. Like, he's detonating these missiles around the world. Soldiers are like getting set on fire. There's a Soviet submarine that explodes, and Blofeld reveals that his plan is to sell nuclear supremacy to the highest bidder. And Washington is next for the attack.
Again, more Austin Powers stuff here.
Sure.
$1 billion.
Yeah. And I do like how unbothered he is, like, through all of this. Like, he's very calm, and I can't tell if that's just the part that has it's written, like, there's not a whole lot to it, or if it's Charles Gray, like, bringing that kind of coolness to it. But I like him in the last little bit of this movie. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of where it just sort of devolves into what we've seen from other James Bond finales, right?
And it becomes the end of Goldfinger again. Like,
minus there are no like dudes dropping down. It's just these helicopters strafing this oil rig over and over again. While Bond kind of runs around through. They put him in a cell that has an open bottom so he can easily escape.
Well, you're gonna put him in a cell with one inept guard and they'll escape. God, you do this every time.
I do want to talk about the oil rig sequence, though, because there was a major faux pas in shooting this sequence.
I don't know about this, I don't think.
Guy decided to have one last dry run-through just to make sure everything was fine before we shot. And the assistant director misunderstood. And when Guy yelled action for the run-through, explosions started happening all over the place. And thank God, a head helicopter pilot, a wonderful man named Jim Gavin, he went, holy Jesus, what's happening down there? And he started rolling the cameras. And a lot of the explosions from the air were off that take.
Just like Danny McBride in Tropic Thunder.
Mother Nature just pissed her pants suit!
Big ass titties!
Guy stood on that oil rig, and he was apoplectic, but he was so calm, and that was Guy. I mean, Guy never raised his voice. And the assistant director said, I'm so sorry, Guy. And Guy said, I'll handle it. And he said, Guy, I'll get the people here. He said, I'll handle it. He said, Guy, I don't think you understand the pressure on the thing and so on of being an assistant director. He said, I was the assistant director on the African Queen. I was the assistant director on the whatever he started doing with. He said, and I'll handle it.
Well, that explains there's some unexplained explosions there too. Like my favorite shot, there is a dude who gets shot by a helicopter and falls over a banister, and he lands and there's an explosion. And I was like, was that guy full of gasoline, or did I miss him like pulling the pin on a grenade or something? I rewatched it like twice and it made me laugh. This whole finale is just, even the way Blofeld goes out is a joke, right? Like he's getting in this little submarine. Although I do love, so he's got this scientist Metz who's working for him. And much like the scientist in previous movies, he's suddenly had a change of heart. And he says, we should surrender. And Blofeld says, no. And then he says, prep my mini sub, like very quietly, and it's just sort of lets himself out. But yeah, Bond hijacks the crane that the sub is in and just smacks it into the control room to stop the satellite.
Just starts playing pinball with this thing. Like,
right. I do like the little bit where Tiffany grabs a machine gun and fires it into the air and it knocks her off the boat from the recoil.
Again, a character that, does she know what's happening or not? Like,
right.
I feel like her character would know how to do something, not just be a bumbling idiot while the finale's going on.
Right. It's a bummer.
Yeah.
And did you think for like half a second we were going to get yet another ending with Bond and the girl in a raft?
It crossed my mind. I was like, here we go again. No, what's funny about this is usually where our Bond movie will end. But we haven't dealt with Mr. Kidd or Mr. Wint.
Like, who I guess are now free agents but still want to kill James Bond? Or is the implication that Blofeld's still out there and he sent them to do it?
See, that's the other problem I have with this finale. Again, like, all this shit happens with the mini sub with Blofeld, but you never get a definitive, like, he died in that.
Yeah. No, it's an afterthought almost. It feels like, again, like it was a mistake to bring Blofeld back because there's so much built up to this confrontation. And I mean, the original plan was for him to be the villain of the next one as well. But they because of the ongoing rights battle with Kevin McClory over Thunderball, they backed off the character and Spectre.
Wow.
For the next film. But yeah, we are left with this fight on the cruise ship with Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, which I think is very fun. Mr. Wint going over the menu for the evening, which ends with the bomba surprise, which is just a bomb. And she's like, "Oh, what's in it?" And he goes, "That would spoil the surprise, madam."
I find this little tacked on ending with them way more satisfactory than anything on the oil rig. Like,
I agree. Yeah, and it's a fun bit. Like, Bond blows them up, throws them overboard. Like, it's a good. Oh, I mean, Mr. Kidd,
I love the fire stunt with him
set on fire.
Like,
they built asbestos hand molds that he put on over him. And according to Potter Smith, like, on set, Jill St. John suddenly bolted upright when she saw what the stunt was and said, "Is he getting hazard pay for this?" So she was very much like Tiffany Case in real life, which I love.
But of course, we have to end the entire debacle on a terrible James Bond one-liner.
Oh yeah, what's the joke again?
Well, he's certainly left with his tails between his legs.
The entire shot of him flipping him over this side of the boat and everything, it's all just...
It's so goofy.
Yeah, like, I prefer this over the oil rig stuff, but still, like, it's like, come on. I don't need this last joke. It's kind of silly.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I gotta say, like, the original ending was a lot more elaborate. So Blofeld was going to escape in his sub, and Bond was going to hang on to a weather balloon and follow him in the sky, and they were going to both end up in this fight at the salt mines, where Bond throws Blofeld spoilers for Halloween Ends, throws Blofeld into like a salt granulator where he would be like ground up and killed for good. And Bond was going to say, "Oh, he's the real salt of the earth," or something like that. And then the Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint fight happens. And the conclusion of that was, So they were going to have rigged up this Home Alone style contraption where when Bond came in to say hi to say hi to Tiffany, the boiling oil was going to pour on them and kill them. And instead Bond goes in through the window, pours the boiling oil, throws the boiling oil on Mr. Wint, and then Mr. Wint is like stabbed on an ice sculpture in the hallway. Like there was going to be like this very over the top death scene for him.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm good with the way they went with it. I could have done without the joke, but I'm good with the way they went out.
Yeah.
But ultimately, at the end of Diamonds Are Forever, I'm wishing it was a little bit better of a movie.
I agree. I mean, this is one that I feel like I teed this one up a lot in our earlier episodes, because when I think about this movie, all the stuff I think about is Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd, and I think about the stuff with Jimmy Dean and Bambi and Thumper. I'm only thinking of the highlights and the camp and the silliness, and I forget that the plot is kind of mush and that Connery's not into it. This is one that I still return to fairly often, but it never sticks with me, I guess, because I legitimately today I had to rewatch the finale to make sense of some of my notes, and then I still asked you what the last line of the movie was.
Well, that's where I'll also say the reason I watched it 3 times is because I couldn't fucking remember what happened.
It wasn't sticking with you.
It's one of those that's like, oh, I've seen that Bond movie. Next one.
Sure.
So, and it's a lot of it, I think, is due to the fact that we were trying to move on from Connery. We didn't succeed with that in whatever way. And now we've got Connery back in the role. And it just, I don't know, like I'm ready to move on from Connery at this point. And I guess I'm lucky that now we are moving away from Connery, at least
we're going into
few
the
movies.
We're going into the Moore era at long last. So the plan is, right, we're going to have a little interstitial episode after this.
We're going to take a little break. We're not going to come back next week, or we're not going to come back next month with Live and Let Die. We're going to do a little intermittent episode. I think we're going to talk about our rankings for the Sean Connery movies.
Yeah. And our hopes for the future, and maybe discuss another little film that we enjoy quite a bit.
And we may not get in a real in-depth conversation about this movie, but we're going to watch another movie for that episode, and we'll leave you guys in suspense for that a little bit. But it kind of has to do with Bond, and it's kind of something we found on the internet that sparked our curiosity. So we're going to watch the movie, talk about it a little bit, along with our rankings of the Connery movies.
Yeah.
And so, but
I'm looking forward to that.
We'll be back next month with that one. Nathan, before we get out of here, what you got going on? What do you want to plug?
So this will be out on the 7th, correct? November 7th. Okay. So AIPT Comics podcast. We've got some really fun stuff coming up. We've done a lot of really great interviews recently. We're coming up on our 200th episode, and we are going to be celebrating that with hopefully a couple of Spider-Man-esque Spider-Man involved guests. We're working on the details right now, but I'm really excited for that, because me and my co-host Dave, we're big Spider-Man fans, and That's a Scary Movie, we've just wrapped up our nostalgic spooky season offerings. We went through a lot of like movies that we watched as kids that kind of were gateway horror for us. Moving into November, we've got some really fun stuff planned for the holidays. We're going bi-weekly now for the show, because we're both super busy, and that'll give us an opportunity to sort of bank up some episodes and deliver them to our usual standards of quality, and still not go completely cuckoo bananas. On the Silver Linings playlist, let me look up the schedule for that real quick.
Just got through doing your spooky season stuff with that.
Yeah, Silver Linings playlist. We just wrapped up spooky season, covered all horror movies for the month of November, and we're still kind of keeping with it, or for the month of October rather, and we're still kind of keeping with it going into November, the day this episode drops, we will be putting out our episode on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so that's going to be a really fun one. We had our friend John Hauser on to talk about a movie that is so close to being good and has a lot of weird stuff going on the production side of things. But it's a fun chat, and since we've talked about it a ton. In this episode, surprisingly, we just dropped our episode on Halloween Ends last week. And yeah, that's about. Oh, and I was just recently on Not a Bomb podcast talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which is a lot of fun. A weird, very strange movie.
Yeah, me and you share a liking to that movie where a lot of people don't like it so much.
Yeah, I've got a soft spot for it. It's a movie that's definitely compromised by the studio, and it's a weird time, but it has maybe the best joke in the whole series in a scene involving a speak and spell. So I have a soft spot for that one as well.
All right. Well, I mean, VHS Files, we've got, we just finished up spooky season here. We just dropped our Trick or Treat episode on Halloween. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out. We gush over Trick or Treat and how
great movie,
why it's not a Halloween classic in a lot of people's eyes.
Another movie that was totally screwed over by its studio.
Oh, big time. We go over that in detail.
I never saw until you recommended it to me, and it's now like one of my faves.
Oh, it's a great Halloween flick. So if you haven't checked that episode or that movie out, go check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
And we will be back next month with our little rankings episode and talking about a specific movie that might tie into the Bond universe.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
But until next month, Nathan.
Stay shaken.
Never stirred.